is not paid for by them. That is paid for by the people of Detroit.
You might be qualified, ML.
I'm not qualified for this job.
Let me tell you something. You want to go right now? Okay? You want to go right now, Albert?
Hey kids, it's your old pal ML Elric back with another episode of ML Soul of Detroit, but we are not joined by Mark Fellhauer. I am in the power chair. And on behalf of Mark, who wanted me to say this, but he wasn't man enough to be here, Jim Harbaugh is a lying bum. And Mark, I appreciate you leaving that message. I wish you had the courage to deliver it yourself because it is absolutely true. But that's okay.
What do you mean you're in the power chair? You're always in the power chair.
This is
You're a white man. You're always in the power chair. What are you talking about?
Technically known as the power chair in studio parlance. This is inside, behind the scenes stuff. This is, for our theater of the mind, we're taking you behind the scenes so you can actually see and hear what it's like to be a part of one of America's leading news commentary podcasts.
You look a little different. Maybe it's just that it's the angle. You're not in the same chair you're normally in, so I'm seeing you from a different view, a different vantage point, as it were.
It might be healthy for you to see me.
You look a little
from
more
a different
handsome.
vantage point.
Yeah.
Perhaps not so judgmental.
Really? Well, you look a little more handsome. I'm just saying.
Still objectifying people. At least you're not talking about my calves, which are tragic. But we have a great show for you today. We are joined by that was Shawn Windsor, by the way. I know you recognize those dulcet tones, that distinctive cadence, that finely measured delivery, every syllable pondered and
a little
pressed.
bit too much.
Yeah, no. It's. I wouldn't say that you talk slow. I just say that by the time you speak, we wish you'd spent more time thinking about what you're going to say. But you get there.
Oh, the curse of the South.
I thought there's Marjorie Taylor Greene was the curse of the South. She wants another Civil War, I heard.
She does, but we don't need to talk about her. We should talk about our guest.
Looking to go 0 for 2. Yes, we have a lot of guests today, and we are pleased to be joined in studio by our friend and colleague, Andrea Sahouri, who covers, I was going to say crime in the metro area and issues like that, but she's been covering crime in East Lansing, doing some great work on the shootings, the fatal shootings at Michigan State University, and trying to help us understand why we have such a violent society and what we can do about it. It's a big job, but she's more than up to it. You may have seen her in the media before she came back to Detroit because she was detained by the police while covering the Black Lives Matter movement out west. And we'll talk to her a little bit about that, as well as what she saw in covering the Michigan State tragedy. But really, she's here to talk about one of the most astounding cases we've had in an area that is filled with astounding cases. 3 guys were supposed to be at a rap show in Southwest Detroit at L Club, disappeared, reappeared 2 weeks later in a rat-infested basement in Highland Park. Needless to say, they were not extant. They are no longer with us, and we are still trying to figure out what's going on with that. Andrew's going to talk to us about that. And in a little while, we'll be joined by Kaleena Kniess, who is, of course, our NIL athlete from Michigan State, who wrote an outstanding opinion piece in the Detroit Free Press about what it was like to be in East Lansing, what it was like to consider going back to campus after the shooting that happened. Frankly, she was right near Berkey Hall. And if she had not had an exam that let out early, she may have walked right into the path of Anthony McRae, the killer who took 3 lives, changed 5 lives forever, and 5 lives physically, but thousands of lives, tens of thousands of lives, will never quite be the same. So we'll talk to her. And if we have time, we may get into my trip to the Nuthouse. That is really the name of an establishment in Lansing, where I saw the future of the Michigan Republican Party, and I will just say that the venue was aptly named, but it was an interesting weekend, to say the least. All this is brought to you by Luke Nowacki, who can help you plan for your future, and David Hall, who can make your present a lot better with a great deal on a mortgage. We'll tell you more about them after we finally get to Andrea, who's been so kind to wait. I know she had a big volleyball game last night. She's an outstanding athlete and a great reporter, and joins us with an amazing story. Andrea, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about this L Club gig that was one of these guys is it's kind of newsworthy in and of itself. He's a rapper from Oscoda, which is not what I consider to be a hotbed of dope rhymes, but maybe I just haven't been to the right places up north. They were coming to Southwest Detroit, but just never quite got here.
Yeah, it was actually Lounge 31 on the east side that they were
what?
supposed to go to. I think Gratiot and 7 Mile.
We don't have a normal research team this week.
Yeah, we had to lay off our intern because it's sniffing glue.
Yeah. Well, at least 2 of them. Reportedly, there's 3 of them, but confirmed, at least 2 of them had spent time in prison together. I know one of them. His rap alias is Marley Whoop. His real name is Armani Kelly. He's the one from Oscoda. He had just been paroled in July.
And he was with B12 and Juggs.
Yes.
These are great. I would have thought Armani would have been his performing name. That's kind of a groovy name, but he was given name of Armani, but known as Marley Whoop.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was really he really wanted, he was just released. He really wanted to get his name out there and have his music heard. And then he was with 2 other people, Dante Wicker and Montoya Givens. Dante is from Melvindale and Montoya Givens is from Detroit. And so Wicker, known as B12, and Armani Kelly, they were set to perform, and it looked like it was like a birthday party based on flyers. But the performance was canceled, and this was the evening of January 21st. And so that performance was canceled, and the fiance of Armani Kelly told me that it was because of there was some technical failures, and then the owner of Lounge 31 confirmed that with me as well, I guess with the DJ set. So they're not sure if they were in the club physically, but, the set was canceled, and Armani's fiance said they were going to try to find, like, an open mic night. And then that's the last anyone had ever heard from them until nearly 2 weeks later when their bodies were found in an abandoned apartment building in Highland Park.
Highland Park,
yeah,
right.
Rat-infested. A lot of squatters there, according to police. And yeah, after that night, their cell phone activity had completely stopped. Their social media activity had completely stopped. And Armani Kelly, the car that Armani Kelly was driving, which according to his mother was her husband's, he had borrowed it to drive to, from Oscoda to Detroit. It was found in Warren. And it was moved a couple of times in Warren as well. So there was 3 locations where this car was found. And then they apprehended someone, suspected of playing a role in the vehicle's theft, basically. Not necessarily the missing persons case, but, just the vehicle's theft. And yeah, so it's a pretty wild case. We still don't know why that car was in Warren or, what really actually happened to them. Police, if I had to guess, I think that they know. And then they're probably just waiting for, either confessions or evidence to make their arrest. If that's just my guess, that's complete speculation right there. But, no arrests have been made, but it sounds to me, just based on kind of underlining sentiment and conversations, that I think that they know. They have a pretty good idea, but we'll see.
So originally, I thought I heard that they were supposed to perform at L Club. Was that just some early information that was not accurate? Because that's a long way from 7 and Gratiot, and L Club's actually a great venue if anybody's ever been there, especially in the summer. I mean, they have an outdoor area that's just top notch. 7 and Gratiot, on the other hand, a little sketchier. It was pretty dangerous way back when I used to take saxophone lessons there. There used to be a great new wave dance club there called Todd's. It was one of the first places that had a gay night, and it was just it was like a fortress, flat black paint, big dance floor and everything like that. But since then, that area's gotten a little rough. And I'm assuming that this club that they were playing at would be more of like a social club than maybe a licensed liquor establishment that you would expect to go to, that you'd see advertised in the Metro Times or even in the Free Press.
Yeah, it's definitely more of that social club-esque. I think they have hookah there that people can smoke, and it's not like I've been to the L Club many times in college and now that I live here, but yeah, no, I have not heard anything about the L Club, but I don't think that that's correct. Police have not mentioned that.
Okay.
I have not heard that from the mother of Armani Kelly, who I've interviewed, and the fiance. They've all just mentioned Lounge 31.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm not quite as old as Shawn, but if you're playing at L Club, you're probably a band that has some sort of national profile. You're an up-and-coming band, but I've never heard of these guys before. Have you had a chance to listen to their music? Are they any good?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, subjective. I think that they really all just cared about their craft. And, like I said, when I spoke to Armani Kelly's family, he had just been released from prison and he really just wanted to make a name for himself, and he really did care. And so I think the effort was put in there, and, it's just unfortunate.
And do we know whether the birthday gig they were going to play was for a friend, or was this something where they were booked and people like, hey, guess who's playing at your party? It's like, okay, I guess we'll come out and see. Yeah,
when I asked Armani Kelly's mom that, she didn't really know many, of those specific details. She didn't know the people he was with. So she didn't know if that was their friends, but they were booked for that gig. I mean, it's likely that it could have been a friend of theirs, how it goes.
But did she know B12 and Juggs?
She told me no.
Okay, yeah. So all she knows is my son just got out of the joint. He wants to be a rapper. He's got a gig in Detroit with these other two cats, or at least one of them is a performer. The other guy may have just been a buddy. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't know anything about them. She doesn't know anything about the venue. She doesn't know anything about the gig. And the next thing she knows, her son has disappeared with her husband's car. And that's it.
Yeah, I mean, there's more. So, as she's looking for her son, and Lori Kemp is her name, Armani Kelly's mother, as she's desperately looking for her son, going across state, she's from Lansing. They're from Lansing, actually. So, in their hometown of Lansing and Oscoda, in Detroit, in Warren, putting up all these flyers, even at Gratiot and 7 Mile area. And she had come to hear about this video that her son had posted on Facebook that had some references, some very subtle, not explicit references to the Bloods. And I mean, that can be interpreted many different ways. So I would really like to say that this is, broader speculation on the internet. But, and, when you listen to the video, they're talking about, he's talking about conflicts he's had in prison and out of prison. And then he mentioned shooting and video games, and it kind of being, and then the people that is on the video with him, they're kind of talking about but I'm talking about real life shooting. It's kind of you real life? Yeah, I'm real life. Stuff like that, where it
gotta get their props.
Yeah, it can kind of be construed as maybe, there is some beef between these two people. Again, this is all speculation. Police have said nothing about this, but that's just kind of where the internet is flocking to. And Lori Kemp, the mother. So when I talked to her, when I interviewed her, it was the day before. I think the day before they found the bodies, or maybe 2 days before they found the bodies. And she was like, "Oh, apparently I didn't even know this, but apparently my son was a gang member in prison, and, I don't judge him because he did what he had to do to survive, but I didn't even know this." Again, I don't think she knows for certain. I reached out to the MDOC and, hadn't had confirmation of any of this. So just want to clarify. But it's just, I say it not to try to spread rumors, but to really just emphasize how crazy this case has gone in many different directions, basically.
Was she the mom that found used the
Yes.
locating
Yeah.
system that was in the car? Did she know that immediately? And did she then turn that information over to the police to?
Yeah. So when she reported her son missing, at the time it was hard for her because there was a lot of jurisdiction issues. She last saw her son in Oscoda, so she had to report it missing in Oscoda. But the car is found in Warren. But then, they went missing in Detroit. So for a few days, I mean, Detroit police had their first press conference, I think a week after she reported her son missing. So it was a few days of, oh, this is not my jurisdiction. Like, oh, you have to, of kind of just trying to get them all aligned into this investigation to find these 3 men. And police themselves have said this is very irregular. This is very rare. Usually when adults go missing, they're alone and they're usually found safely. I'm thinking people with mental illness kind of like start wandering, and I see that a lot with press conferences. But it's very rare for 3 men, and alarming for 3 men to go missing together and not just not been heard from since. And obviously, as we know, it's now a homicide case. So I think with the OnStar, if I remember correctly, after they reported missing, I think I don't remember if she contacted OnStar or if OnStar contacted the police. I think maybe a little bit of both. Like maybe she contacted OnStar, and then after that, OnStar like notified police of. But I would have to like look in my notes. But I think it's either way, like
that was an interesting detail in your reporting.
Yeah.
So, is it your sense that the person who stole the car just found a car and said, "Hey, I'll make a buck out of this, or I'll use it to do whatever I need to do," or that he may be somehow linked to their disappearance? Because, as you say, it's weird for people to disappear like that, but the way they were found and where they were found certainly makes it sound like they were somebody didn't like them, got them, dumped them, and maybe as soon as that night or the night before. I mean, do we know how long they were dead?
Not yet.
Okay.
No.
You reported their bodies were frozen, right? So
yeah, it took like a day or two to even perform the autopsy. Because
you got to wait for things to thaw.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds kind of gross, but I mean, when a body freezes, all that tissue, you don't want to cut that, and ugh.
Well,
So
we know they died of gunshot wounds,
right?
So I don't know if I mentioned that, but yeah, they did die. They were shot and killed. So I would assume. That,
somebody didn't like them.
Yeah.
Somebody was pissed off. But do we know whether it was execution style or whether they were running or,
Not yet.
So the cops are keeping pretty tight lips.
or whether they were killed in the basement or dumped there.
Yeah, we're working
all these
on
questions.
We're working on getting those details.
And you would assume there's more than one perpetrator, right? For 3 guys? I mean...
Yeah, unless it's Scarlamango, and even then I think you only did one at a time.
Right.
But this is one of those things where multiple jurisdictions. So you've got Highland Park. They went missing in Detroit. Car shows up in Warren. So who's in charge? And Highland Park, for folks who don't know this, and I learned this as the obituary writer for the Free Press way back when, at one time was the poshest suburb in the entire state of Michigan. It was the Birmingham, the Grosse Pointe, the Bloomfield Hills, you name it. Amazingly wealthy suburb. The elementary schools had beautiful swimming pools. I mean, it was riding high on all the money that Henry Ford brought in there when he built the Model T plant there. But obviously times have changed, and at different periods over the last 20 years, Highland Park has been so destitute that they didn't even have their own police department. And at various times, the sheriff's department have stepped in to provide police services. I think the state police have at times. Highland Park's police department has had some, shall we say, rather challenged officers based on some reporting that our colleagues have done. And now when you drop a body somewhere, Highland Park is kind of the place to dump a body because there's a lot of abandoned buildings. The police department probably does not have the most sophisticated CSI operation you can imagine. And I just wonder.
Oh, there's a question. Oh, I was waiting.
I thought we'd provide some context, Shawn. We weren't all chilling in Austin, serving up that Gordon's Food Service corned beef hash, or was that? No, that was in. Where'd you serve the hash?
I think the Fleetwood Diner in Ann Arbor.
Fleetwood. Yeah. So. But so who's in charge of this investigation? I mean, is it Highland Park? Is it Detroit? Is it the state police? Because I think state police were on the scene, right? When you
it's state
found out
police.
about
It's
this.
the homicide task force
Okay.
between state police and Detroit Police Department. It was the Detroit Police Department who found the bodies. They were conducting the missing persons search.
Okay.
I think that they were finally able to obtain like specific data from their cell phones that like brought them to that location. And yeah, it was Detroit police, and then like I said, homicide task force came along from MSP, and yeah, so that's been the point people in the investigation has been Michigan State Police.
And you think your reporter's instinct, your sixth sense tells you that they might know who's responsible?
Yeah, that's my instinct, but nothing. There is no evidence out there to suggest that at this time, besides me knowing that they have updates that they're not ready to publicly release. That's what I was told. And so when I hear that, I mean, okay, they're building their case, right? Like
Sure.
they know they have strong inclination. They may have some suspects, but if you start saying that publicly, like that could jeopardize everything, right? So that's when police tell me that, that's kind of what I've garnered is like they have some leads and they don't want to say anything publicly because that could jeopardize the investigation. So that's where my inkling comes from.
So
it's
they-
just them saying that they have no public update at this time.
They could go on the lam, Shawn, which is a term for skedaddle. They could flee,
Thank you for that.
could abscond.
I appreciate that.
Okay, I just wanted to.
Any more?
No, that's
Synonyms? No.
I was going backwards in the
Do that.
thesaurus. That's why I ended with abscond. It's in the A's.
Empty that brain out.
But sorry, I just want to say on the because I had such a long convoluted question. The guy who stole the car, do they think, or have they given any indication that he may or may not know more than he's telling? Or is he just some jerk who stole a car and
Well,
that's
he
that?
wasn't apprehended for stealing the car. Apparently, this is reportedly, like he allegedly told police that he was like told to move the car. I don't know exactly more what he was
And he
saying.
was a teenager. You said juvenile in your report.
He's a teenager. So, we don't know exactly what else he told police, but there's been reports that suggest that he was just told to move the car, and someone else is telling him that, right? Like, the police are very careful. Like, they've emphasized that he was not apprehended for in the specific like homicide case, right? He was
Okay.
apprehended for the theft of the car. So we'll see where this person's like involvement is when more information is released or or discovered on reporters' end or whatever.
It's pretty intriguing that you can now track the car's whereabouts by a GPS or something. You can find people by their phones. But for 2 weeks, this car is bouncing around all over the east side, and these two guys are, no trace of them until they're found in this basement. I know that you've just moved back to Michigan within the past year or so I hope this isn't an unfair question, but do you have a sense that there is a lot of gang activity around here, that there might be someone who would try and even a score or to be taking orders from someone in prison, or that we have the Bloods or the Latin Kings or the Crips or...
I mean, historical like context would say yes, right? There's still the trial ongoing for the 7 Mile Bloods, right? There's
7 Mile Bloods.
Yeah,
Crash it in
there's-
7 Mile.
Yeah, so we know that like historically there are gangs, and it's not just Detroit. I mean, Des Moines had
Sure.
cliques, I would say, but not necessarily full-fledged, but cliques. And I just speaking to people who have who deal with gun violence and violence prevention in general, they do talk about gang violence, but they also say it's not what it used to be. So I don't want to say there's not.
Right. Not like Young Boys Incorporated way back when crack was
Yeah.
the scourge of...
It's just a little different
city.
now, is the sense that I get from
Okay.
talking to people in like crime prevention, and it's a lot of unfortunately, sometimes a lot of young folk and some teenagers getting into some bad things. But yeah, that's the sense I get so far. Is that it's there, but it's also not what it used to be.
Okay.
What's been the response to this reporting that you've done?
I think just a lot of people are like curious, like what's going on. I know that Armani Kelly's mother, Lori Kemp, was really upset with police in the beginning of the investigation because, again, it took like exactly a week for Detroit police to hold a press conference.
Which could feel like an eternity, I would imagine. Yeah.
You know, and then the chief, and then the next day, the chief also held an additional press conference. So, you know, she was pretty upset about that. And I think that the families were just grateful that it got like the media attention and that people were helping. And I know that like there were some GoFundMes that people were, donating to. And, yeah, I think people are just really curious and, wanted to help. But this is unfortunate that it.
We were talking before we started recording today about why some crimes get more coverage than others and why we pay more attention here as opposed to there. And do you think that because they were rappers, that they were just three guys that worked in a factory or a store or a bank or whatever, that it would have the same attention? You think that the rappers adds to the
I mean, they weren't
reason?
big-time rappers, right? They were not big-time rappers. They were really just trying to, make it, right? But at the end of the day, I think that, unfortunately, in a way, like, three Michigan rappers sounds a little bit, like, sexier, right? Like, in the news than it, so...
Three grocery clerks, right?
Yeah. So, I think that's part of it. And again, like, I think what else is, I think the public is recognizing, like, yeah, it is very rare for three adults to go missing. I mean, I don't even remember, like, I don't think I've ever covered something like that. And when I spoke to the Warren police commissioner, he had said in his over 50-year career in law enforcement, he does not remember a case like this. So it is very rare, and I think that even, like, the public is recognizing. But I think, with the headlines saying rapper and whatnot, I think obviously, like I said, it sounds.
It does have a little cachet, and it is unusual for people to be missing that long. You get, and I'm sure you get them too, Andrea, these updates every day from Detroit police saying so and so is missing. Be on the lookout, and it's usually teenagers, and sometimes it's people who are a little older. But then within a day or so, it's like, we found him. Don't worry about it. And these guys, and plus, in the pre-cell phone era, when I was 25 or 27, my mom wouldn't know where I was for a week. So, I mean, that wasn't that unusual. But the fact that there was no trace of them whatsoever, and then to end up like this is it's pretty extraordinary. So, hopefully, we'll get a resolution of this. You're staying on this story. This is one of the ones you're watching pretty closely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And you have been diverted though to help out with coverage of the Michigan State shootings. How has that been? How has that been for you? Because I know reporters can experience a lot of trauma when they have to cover events like this that are so raw, and when you're dealing with people whose emotions are, just overwhelming.
Yeah, I think that's on point. Especially, in this beat, like criminal justice, I see, unfortunately, like pain and horror and grieving and loss every day almost. So it can be a lot. And especially, and I think like mass shootings is like that times a million sometimes, because it's, the whole country's feeling it. And it's just kind of that sentiment, like, when will this end? I don't think anytime soon. So that was pretty emotional. I think as a reporter, it's always kind of hard to approach people who had just lost someone. I've done it so many times, but in this instance, it was very difficult. Just thinking about parents, their kids are just at college, and then, they hear of this mass shooting, they're probably terrified, and then, oh, that's their kid. And because there's so many mass shootings, especially at schools, they're probably thinking like, oh, I never thought that would be my kid. And then it is. So
did you have to talk to family members?
Yeah. So
I
kind of specifically stuck on one victim. We kind of split it up, colleagues. So my task was to, try to get in touch with victim, 20-year-old Brian Frazier. He's from Grosse Pointe. went to Grosse Pointe, I think north or
South. He went to South, yeah.
South, yes. Grosse Pointe South, and tremendous athlete, really into his church community as well. And he was a leader. He was the president of his fraternity at MSU, and just a sophomore studying business, right? And I think he was killed in the Union at Michigan State. And I, I went to their house and I saw his father, and like the first thing I noticed was like how much he looks like Brian looks like his dad, except his dad had darker hair. Like that was like number one, like, wow, like kind of hit me, and that made me really emotional. And then just like seeing like his eyes were beet red. Sometimes like you don't know if you have the right house, but like I saw his face. He looked like Brian. Saw his eyes, and I was like, yeah, like wow.
This
like,
is a man who has looked into hell.
Yeah, his eyes were like very red, and that was like extremely emotional. And I kind of felt like an asshole at that moment too. Like if I'm gonna be real, as a journalist job, you want to make sure that we're giving the opportunity so their loved ones are not just seen as a victim. And so, we also want to create change. And so to end these types of tragedy, we need to put like human faces on it and like show people that, these aren't just, Brian, this is not just Brian Fraser. This is someone's son. This is someone's brother. This is someone's loved one, and et cetera. So, but still, it kind of is really uncomfortable as a journalist too.
Very.
But he didn't want to talk, which is completely understandable. Was not going to pressure him at all. So I get to my car, and his sister comes out, and she wants to send me photos of him, because I think that some people were using like social media photos, and they're like, no, we want like a really, and
Right.
what they were sending was like his senior photo, which again is emotional, just thinking about how young he is as well. And during our interaction, there was one point where she was like, oh yeah, do you have a sibling? And I'm like, yeah, like I have an older brother. And she said, tell him you love him. And we both just start crying and hugging. And that was also really emotional. And, I just gave her my number. I just said, like, listen, I don't want to pressure you, but if and when you're ready, I'm here to tell his story. And, I went to a prayer service for him. I think it was the next day at St. Paul's on the church, Catholic Church.
Yeah, St. Paul's on the lake.
Sorry, yeah, I can't even speak right now.
No, that's okay. This is traumatizing for reporters as well, which, it's part of our job, so I'm not asking anybody to feel sorry for us, but I read what you wrote about that exchange with his sister, who I assume is his younger sister.
I think older, actually.
Older? Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, then I guess I'd be a little thankful for that, because maybe she's better prepared for trauma, even though who could be prepared for something like this? But you have siblings. You're not that far removed from college. I'm 55, and I don't feel that far removed from college. And I'm grateful just in terms of being someone who represents the free press, that someone with your sensitivity and your ability was sent on that assignment where you could deal with people on a very human level and could hopefully provide them with some comfort, because I think people think that, the microphone gets stuck in somebody's face, how you feeling right now. And I haven't done that. And I've when I teach journalism, I tell my students, we're not here to ask questions like that. The answer is obvious. We're here to ask people about the person who's gone. And the fact that they came out and they brought photos to you shows that they understand that this is an opportunity for the world to know about someone they love, and that they should see him the way that they want people to see him, and not doing a keg stand on social media or some blurry picture that somebody posted. And I think a lot of people want to get mad at the media at moments like this, and you're certainly entitled to for your 33 cents a month subscription. But we do provide a service where we give people an opportunity to talk about folks who aren't with us, to share their feelings, to be heard on an important issue, and to make sure that when people see that person, that they see them the way they wish they would be seen. And that's with an appropriate photo, something that brings them some dignity, something that shows some of who they really are, because you can see a lot in photos just by looking at the eyes. If you have ever developed your own pictures, which I know we don't do anymore.
You're gonna start talking about Leica cameras now?
No. I'm sorry. I was trying to get to something serious, Shawn, but I'll try and be brief.
No, can I just say something real quickly?
No, let me just finish.
Okay.
Let me just finish. When you are focusing your print, you focus from the eyes, because that's the first thing that you can really see that comes clear. And you knew from the father's eyes what he was going through. And so when you have a picture of somebody that can convey that emotion, that's really important. And now I'm going to cede the rest of my time to the gentleman from Washtenaw County.
I just wanted, this is a testament to you, Andrea, right? So you're the vibe and the presence you had on that doorstep is partly why that sister came out, right? Because you were aware of what you were doing and the uncomfortable nature. I mean, Mike, I assume you used to do that kind of stuff. I did that, a lot of that. I used to do that all the time, and it never gets comfortable. But that's a huge credit to you. And then to put that detail into the exchange, which I'm really glad you did, because when Mike and I were younger reporters, we didn't always, that would be seen as not objective enough somehow or whatever, and it's ridiculous. And
I don't know about that, but maybe where you worked.
Yeah, well, in any case, that was a great detail, though.
Thanks.
And a great exchange. It was
a very telling moment.
Absolutely.
Very powerful.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, like you're saying, yeah, it doesn't get easier. I think actually, like I said, I've done this so many times, but I think it actually gets harder.
I agree.
You just become more and more aware as you do this job, but I think there's so many times I'm so surprised every time I do it by how many times people want to be heard at the end of the day. Like, it's more times than not that people do talk to me than don't. So in this case, even I tried to reach out to friends of Brian's, and honestly, like, they're just not ready. So that's fine. I'm never going to push someone, but that doesn't actually happen often. Like, yeah, it happens, but you just be so surprised by how many times people actually do want to talk. And I think that's why we do it at the end of the day, because we know that. And I think just giving someone the opportunity without being like pushy or disrespectful and just being kind and considerate, I think that goes a long way.
Well, and it can be part of the healing process, because there are people who do want to help, and sometimes the only thing they really can do that helps is to talk.
Exactly.
And to share an anecdote and to help bring a greater awareness. Because I think the more we know about these 3 lives that were ended, and then the 5 that are going to be changed just because they were shot, physically their lives have been changed. Emotionally, that's a whole nother story. But the more we know about them and who they are, I think the more we're going to be outraged, and we're going to be able to muster the energy that we need to do something about this. And it's, we that's a whole nother subject we can talk about another time. But for folks who are just losing their minds, saying we have to enforce the laws that we have, and that if he'd been charged with everything that they could have charged him with and prosecuted him the first time he encountered cops, I just want to tell you folks, as someone who's covered cops off and on for 30 years, people with a clean record who are charged with a felony when they're arrested are almost never convicted of that felony. That's just not how the system works. So if you're troubled by what happened, if you want to see something done to help make this less common, we're going to have to come up with something better than let's just enforce the laws that we've got, because the fact of the matter is the laws that we got aren't good enough. And there are other places where there are people in Michigan who want to do this too, where they want to have no cause concealed, where you don't have to have a permit, you don't have to have nothing. That ain't going to fix it either, folks. A classroom full of students on a Monday night throwing shots at some joker who comes through the door. Let me tell you something, the body count would have been to the roof. But that's, again, we can get into that another time. We do have Kaylee's joined us, so we want to get to her in just a minute. But Andrea, thanks for coming on. Thanks for telling us a fascinating tale about these rappers who disappeared. Hopefully we'll get a resolution to that soon. And thanks for telling us about, how you approached a very sensitive subject. And thanks for doing it like, I'm tempted to say like a professional, but I really mean like a human, because that's part of what being a professional is just being an authentic, real, living, breathing person.
Yeah,
So-
I couldn't agree more.
So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
So that's Andrea Sahouri, our colleague at the Detroit Free Press. You'll see her byline there. We encourage you to look for her work. You can look for my work if you got some time left and you stumble across Shawn's work. We apologize in advance for that, but we are selling subscriptions for 33 cents a month. It's 99 cents for 3 months. I think it's $12 for a year or something like that. That's pretty tough to beat, but please support our journalism because it allows us to have reporters who can tell stories like this and to get to the bottom of things. And as you can tell, Andrew's a real addition to the Free Press. It's going to help us. Well, I think we're going to earn that 33 cents. Don't you think, Shawn?
You think so?
I just said I did, and I gave you an opportunity to weigh in.
No. I just was shocked at the opportunity. I didn't know what to do with it. So, yeah.
Apparently. So now let's go to somebody who knows exactly what to do with an opportunity. Our NIL-sponsored athlete, a outstanding high school journalism student at Lake Orion, now a fantastic communicator and I would say 5-tool player at Michigan State. Callie, thanks for coming on. I know we got you by Zoom because you just got out of class, but you had an opportunity to share your thoughts about what happened on Monday in the Free Press. And if anybody could have said it better, I haven't met him yet. That was just a tremendous job.
Thank you. I worked really hard on it. It was definitely a very hard piece to write. I didn't really know if it was the best thing to do at the time, but I'm glad that I got my thoughts down on paper and could just, it was a little therapeutic at the end of the day.
Well, tell me a little bit about what you were thinking when we reached out to you and said, "Hey, do you want to say something about this?" Because I know there are a lot of people who have been going to campus, who've been going to memorial services. You guys started class again on Monday, and there are other people who are just like, "I'm not ready. I this is too raw. I can't face this yet."
Well, I know a lot of people are really upset with the media right now because it kind of feels like our school is a big photo shoot for people. And for a lot of us, it's like hitting really close to home. We've had friends that were stuck on campus. Our friends are hurt. Like, there's just a lot going on here. And the only reason that I wanted to say something is because I am a journalist and I've been doing this for so long, and I wanted someone to say something, and I knew it was going to be hard for some of my classmates, even like my roommates or my friends. Like, a lot of my friends still haven't gone on campus yet because they're just too scared of it all. So I knew that it was something that it's my job. I've been covering the shooting since it happened. I knew it was something that I needed to do.
So after you left your class, you went home, didn't know what was going on, went to Target, found out what was going on, got those 3 words that too many kids are getting and too many parents are seeing: run, fight, hide. And you wrote, "When we left the store, campus was closed off as police searched for the attacker. We couldn't get back home. I am so blessed that we were able to escape to a family friend's house in Waverly, Michigan, a 20-minute drive that felt like hours. My friends, my Michigan State family, were stuck on campus, barricading themselves in study rooms, worrying they would be next. When we got home on Tuesday, I locked myself in my living room with some of the people I loved the most. We simply sat in silence. We tried watching movies to calm our nerves, but every time someone walked past the window, we jumped. My friend would ask if I was okay, and I nodded because words seemed too hard. I didn't believe I was okay, but I didn't know how to feel." I mean, that's a powerful testimony, and that's just a sample of this heartfelt, this raw, and this outstanding account of what it was like to be at a place where you thought you were safe. Class came on Monday, and I know that you were wondering whether you would be ready to go back to class. What was that like, and how do you feel now?
So one of my classes did get moved to Zoom, and we did nothing in class. It was 15 minutes long, and my professor just came on to say, we're not having any assignments due this week. We're just going to meet talk a little bit about what's been going on. We decided that we're going to go back in person next week for that class. We're doing like a Zoom meeting on Wednesday, and it's going to be a tiny little lecture. And then my second class on Monday, the one that I was in, was supposed to be in when the shooting happened. I ended up not going to. I have a group chat with like 12 people in that class, and not a single one of them said they were going. And there was no way I was going to be able to walk back in that classroom and sit through a 3-hour lecture about journalism law with no support system. So no one went to class on Monday. And then today was the first time I went back on campus in a building, and it was really nice. L.A. Dickerson is my professor. She brought us all breakfast. We just sat and we watched a movie. So I'm just easing myself back into it because it is really scary. A couple of my friends still haven't been able to make it back on campus yet because it's just too raw and too hard to do that right now.
Yeah, Kayla, my son, who's a student up there, went back Sunday night and then was on Zoom yesterday, and he was supposed to go to a practice at the Breslin Center yesterday and just couldn't bring himself to do it. And I know his roommates had similar issues, so I'm hearing the same thing. I'm curious how long that took you to write, because I know I wrote something for the Free Press. They asked me to about as a parent and kind of combining it with what Tom Izzo and he went through with his son and my son's roommate. And my brother has a daughter up there who's a sophomore, and I'll tell you, Kaylee, it took me a few days to figure out what to do. And then just as I was writing, and this, I'm a professional writer. It doesn't mean I'm a good writer, but I get paid to write.
You are paid.
Maybe that's good or bad, but in any case, this rarely happens, but when I was done writing it, my hands were shaky, to be honest. And I'm curious if you felt similarly.
I was up for about 45 hours straight, just trying to get the words right and trying to figure out. I didn't want to offend anyone. I didn't want people to think I was looking for attention. It was really more so just, this is what I experienced. And if someone else is experiencing similar feelings, I want them to know that it's okay and it's valid. And so I was just constantly writing and rewriting and writing and rewriting and just trying to make it perfect. I think I was up till like 7 a.m. before I finally sent it in. And then I tried to fall asleep and just like take a nap, and I couldn't do it. And I was just writing and writing and writing. But it took me probably like 12 or 13 hours just writing to get that out. And I mean, I was taking breaks and like walking away. I had my roommates like read it because I didn't want to upset anyone, basically. And it was just really hard to like, especially so soon after everything happened, it was just hard to like get everything in that column that I wanted to say.
And how did you feel when it ran and you saw it?
It was very surreal because as like a student journalist, my dream is to get something published by like a notable newspaper. And like, it was a very exciting moment for me, but it was also a very sad moment because I never wanted to write about a school shooting, especially one that me and my friends were a part of. And I don't know, I'm still very like, did I do the right thing by writing this? I hope some people are finding some clarity in everything when they read my column, but I'm still just very on edge about everything. I just want to please everyone, and I have to know like I can't please everyone. I don't know if you guys read some of the comments on the Free Press, but some of them weren't the nicest, some of them were great, and it's just a little bit hard for me to comprehend like that some people aren't happy with what I wrote.
So I probably should have said this to you before, but I never read the comments.
I don't either. I understand why you did, though, right?
Well, so I don't read them anymore because I used to read them. So Callie's having that experience right now. But, if you've listened to this show before, you've heard Callie on the air, and you know that she's a bright, confident person. She didn't come to the Free Press with this column. The Free Press came to her because talent doesn't need to invite people to the table. The table comes to the talent, and that's what we did in asking her to share her thoughts. But you can hear in her voice that there's some uncertainty there. And I thought one of the things that about this column that was so powerful is it was just a testimony. She didn't make a call to action, which I think would have been fine if she wanted to, but this was written to be as unoffensive to every position on the political compass on this topic. It was really just meant to say, this is what I went through, and I'm sharing this.
This is what my fellow students are going through.
It was somebody who was feeling very vulnerable, making themselves even more vulnerable by sharing some genuine, authentic feelings. And I didn't look at the comments. Like I said, I don't look at the comments, but anybody who had a comment that didn't acknowledge that, for what it's worth, although I think you already know this, they can go straight to hell, and they're not worth your time, and you shouldn't think about them. And if we run across them, they'll get a little, Shawn's going to get mad now, a little Michigan tunnel action.
What was the gist of some of the comments that had an issue, Kaylee?
There were some that were saying that I was being very attention-seeking by writing this. There were a couple that said I should get over it because I don't even know what the women in Ukraine are feeling right now. A lot of people were making comments about political stuff, and that was the last thing I wanted, was this to be political. I wanted to just share my thoughts and my feelings, and I don't know, there was one woman who said, I'm basically saying give guns to kindergartners. I was like, I didn't say any of this. Like, I don't know where you're pulling this from. It was just like a little hectic. But the comments that I did receive, like from my friends and my family, and even some just random students on campus, have reached out to me and said that it really helps them. And it was good to know that someone else was feeling the same way they were feeling. One of the girls who was in my sorority sent me a text and said that she was in, I forget what building, but she was like right next to the Union. And she said that she felt guilty. And that was one of the things I wrote in the column, is like, I felt really guilty and that I couldn't do anything to help. And she said that she felt the same way. And those comments were like, made me feel really good about what I did, because I knew I was doing something right by writing this.
Good.
But the people who were being rude can like eat a dick. I don't know.
That's them, right? It's their own fear, their own insecurity, their own projection. It has nothing to do with you or what you wrote. If it makes you feel any better, I wrote a piece last week and about my son and Tom Izzo and his son and other folks, sons and daughters, and got a lot of the same stuff. You know, people want to know. I had an email. These are not necessarily comments. I don't look at the comments. These are emails to my inbox. But somebody said, it's not about Tom Izzo. It's not about you, right? So I understand that. Somebody didn't like that the me was in the headline. And I didn't really get into the gun angle one way or the other, but I had people that were upset that I didn't go hard enough with guns. So yeah, it's part of it, Kaylee, unfortunately, it's just people are going to have opinions, and you're never going to be able to make everybody happy, and everybody's not going to agree with you. I know you know that intellectually, but now maybe you felt that viscerally a little bit going through this experience, and I'm glad. I hate that people were rude to you, but on the other hand, that will get easier. I can tell you that. And the best thing to do is not look at the comments, but eventually people are going to get you through Twitter or email or whatever, but it'll get easier, and you'll start to realize that there are folks that are, it's their own shit. It's not yours. And there are always going to be people, like you said, that are reaching out saying, thank you. And that's what you need to focus on.
Well, there's only one person who should feel guilty, and he's on a slab at the Ingham County morgue. And anybody else, I don't know what anybody else could have done differently. There's
a lot of survivor's guilt up there, though, right, Kaylee? You know?
Yeah, a lot of people, like one of my really good friends, she was trapped in the library when this all happened, and she doesn't even step foot in the library anymore. Like, a lot of us are just thinking, like, did it have to be them? Like, why couldn't it have been me? Like, it's just my biggest goal in life is to help every person that I can. And the fact that I know there was nothing I could have done to help out these people is what really hurts. And a lot of my friends are really hurting right now, and all I want to do is help them, but a lot of them are just locking themselves in their rooms and not doing anything. And I was like, just let me help. And people really don't want it right now. It's just rough. Like, this place I've never seen Michigan State like this. I've been coming here since I was 2 years old. And just to see campus and the way it is right now, it's like really scary.
Yeah, I was up there on Friday. I normally teach on Fridays, and I'm very curious to see if anybody's going to show up on Friday. And I've been sending messages to my students. They don't really send messages back. They're announcements, and so, they get posted to our class computer system or whatever, this thing we use. But I was up there on Friday, and I just went by the Rock, and I was just there by myself for a little while, and I was surprised at how overcome I was. And I've covered a lot of tragedy, a lot of horrible things, and it was overwhelming. And other people would kind of drift by, and no one talked. Nobody said anything. And there were people who brought their children, and they brought flowers, and I thought it was very nice that they brought their children. I also worried that those kids may grow up to say, well, this is the way the world is that people get killed and then we come and leave flowers, so it won't be as shocking to them. I don't know that that's what's going to happen, but you saw people from all different groups, young, old, with their children, without their children, going to the Rock. There's flowers at Berkey Hall where the shooting happened. And Sparty obviously is a hub of activity and Spartan pride, and there were a lot of people there. And I posted some of what people wrote and stuck on the base of Sparty. And I will tell you that that this is a difficult time for all Spartans, but to see what some of our fellow Spartans have written, from Callie to kids who are anonymous. There's a lot of our fellow Spartans who we can be really proud of, who have a lot to say, who are showing the kind of depth and the kind of character that will carry us through this. But yeah, it is a very uncertain and difficult time, and we really appreciate you sharing those words. Again, we came to her. She did not come to us. She wasn't looking for a platform. She was gracious enough to provide us with her insights. I think you're helping a lot of people, and I hope you know that. And the other ones, you can send them our way because we know what to do with them.
It was a very thoughtful and compelling and I thought kind piece. And you can tell, Kayla, that you put a lot of consideration into it. It read that way, and that's a testament to you.
It should also be noted.
Don't let the assholes stop you from doing what you love to do.
I don't think that story had much, if any, editing. I mean, this is raw, uncut talent from somebody who is incredibly intelligent, incredibly deep, speaking from the heart. I mean, if every one of our colleagues
short declarative sentences
could write like that, these are short declarative sentences.
No. I mean, what Kaylee wrote.
That's what you're going for.
Yeah, no. I'm not always very good at that, but no.
But yeah,
that was part of the power of the piece.
That's great. It's really good. So thanks, Callie. We're gonna head to our Geek of the Week if you want to stick around, but we really appreciate the time you've given us, and hopefully this will get a little bit easier, a little bit every day. I'm sure there'll be some setbacks, but I know that you're gonna get through this, and you're gonna bring a lot of people through it too.
Yeah, we're getting there. Campus is getting a little bit easier to go to every day, so I'm just hoping we'll get back to normal at some point, and that's all I can ask.
You will at some point. Well, thanks for Thanks for talking about what you wrote, and thanks for writing what you wrote, Callie. It's good to hear your voice.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, we're looking forward to having you in studio to talk about something completely different.
Rowing, hopefully.
Where the only controversy will be me and Shawn on something that's completely and
Being
utterly
total idiots.
meaningless.
Yeah.
That's normal. So that's what we want to
Being
get
foolish
back.
idiots, yeah.
So we're going to have a link to Callie's story on our website, which is mlsoulofdetroit.com. Please check it out. You definitely need to read this. And Joe, I think it's time to lighten things up a little bit with our Geek of the Week.
Oh man, the geeks have inherited the earth.
Did I do that?
What a dork.
Does him wanting to play with us again mean that he's turning into a geek, or we're turning into cool guys?
So this kind of tells you a little something about the state of affairs in the good US of A these days, where we're lightening things up by talking about the January 6th insurrection. So I guess it's only a little lighter, but Daniel Rodriguez of Fontana, California, used a stun gun to attack Metropolitan Police Officer Michael Fanone, who was seriously injured. He had a heart attack, and Mr. Rodriguez helped drag him into a crowd where people were beating him, where he was begging for his life, where he was appealing to these lunatics, saying that I have children, I have a family, and he was beaten badly to the point where he's no longer a police officer. Well, Mr. Rodriguez, in pleading guilty to criminal charges, said that at the time he thought he was doing the right thing. He thought he was doing what he had to do to save his country. And at the same time, he's finally acknowledging that he was wrong. Like all these tough guys, he's standing in court crying like a bitch, saying that he was stupid and that he's ashamed. And unfortunately, if that kind of clear-headed thinking had been there on January 5th, Michael Fanone would not have gone through what he went through. We'd have a few more police officers still with us. And I don't just mean alive, I mean still serving as police officers, because this was so traumatizing. Many of them decided this was no longer the right profession for them. So David Rodriguez facing 7 to 10 years in prison. I hope you get every day of those 10 years. But for now, we're just going to have to sentence you to be our Geek of the Week. So for Black History Month, we're trying to highlight some bands that are prominently featuring black musicians, black lead singers. In the case of Big Audio Dynamite, which I think we're going to play before the end of the month, producers like Don Letts, who was such a genius with sampling things for those great Big Audio Dynamite hits. But today we wanted to play Bad Brains, which is a band that is made up entirely of black members. It was actually it started as kind of a jazz fusion group, if you can believe that, and moved into hardcore punk. But the band evolved, and as bands often do, it had different moments, different moods. And there was a period where they kind of had a little bit of a new wave flavor. So we are very happy to bring to you the Bad Brains with Sacred Love.